All right. Good morning. Maybe we could just start with introductions if you all want to go through and introduce yourselves.
Start on that and
Start something.
yes.
Hi, I'm Philippe Louin. I'm an anthropologist and I work with the Afghanistan of the Mohawk Mothers.
I'm Garakuhine. I am a Mohawk mother.
Gunasadaga.
Ganasatake.
Sego, Gwadio Yujats, Waxkarewage. I'm from Gahnawage and Ghanistan Sarah.
I'm Garat Naftaf. I'm from Ganawag and I'm a Mohawk.
I'm Gahaginetta from Ganawagi, and I'm Ganistasra. I've been working on this issue now for quite a long time. So, and it's progressing, I think, in the right direction.
Well, thank you all for joining us. We have another one.
We have another Mohawk in the room. This is my cousin.
Saigon, Chrisette Young Jets. I live in Oregon and I'm just here briefly helping to support.
Right on. We've got worldwide support now.
Yes.
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of media attention towards this issue. And before we get into some of the questions about concerning the recent discoveries, so to speak, maybe one of you can give us a background on how the Mohawk Mothers came about and how they came about to start researching this particular topic.
Who shall we give this to?
You? No?
Well, I can begin by just talking about the first time that I wrote a letter to McGill University about about the money they owe us for one thing, that the land belongs to us. It wasn't at that time that that we had discovered that there were children buried there. So we got that case. What the issue I brought up eventually went into that issue, and now that's the overriding issue of what we're doing. We're looking for those bodies now. We're looking for those children, and we hope that we think we're on the right track.
And what sort of initiated this process of looking for these children? What was revealed? What knowledge did people have of this particular site to begin with?
This particular site is the home of the Allen Memorial Institute, the Royal Victoria Hospital, McGill University, and the Allen Memorial Hospital was a place of a horrible time. It was a place where the MKULTRA mind control experimentation went through there with Dr. Ewan Cameron. And in that process that happened, many people were given lobotomies, lived a life of torture, and in this experiment, in this experience of these people, they have seen and witnessed accounts that there were indigenous people there, and that at one point have seen indigenous children in there. And we're talking around a time when residential schools and many institutions have had indigenous children go through their hands and have experienced some horrible things in their life. And it seemed like the countries, too, in particular, had deemed our children to be expendable. And they were trying to get rid of the Indian problem. So our children did not, the only value they saw in our peoples and our children was the use of experimentation. So there we have our own witness who actually has seen these peoples there and has the experience of that whole time happening. And that to us it's important that we investigate this and find these children if they are there. And there's a very, very high likelihood, and we actually already have found some remains there that needs to be further scrutinized. But also, the land that this sits on is actually uh, is Ungwehue territory, and that is not refuted. And even if somebody refutes it, we are who we are, and we don't need to argue with anybody that that's our original, that's our mother that they sit on. And therefore, that in all actuality, the peoples of this land, our heritage shows, and stories are passed on orally in our heritage, and our histories are passed on orally. And that Deganundak is actually the site of one of our former villages, where we never gave up. We used to move villages around so areas can replenish themselves, and therefore we can use them again. But that particular site is very, very important to us at the time where we needed to have communication happening between us and our other peoples in different areas. And so this place has a vast history, and in light of what is happening across Canada and the United States, of finding many of our children, this is the time that we can access information. We can access people who have the expertise in doing and successfully treating this situation. So MKUltra is actually something that is one of the things that have happened there. And but right down the street from this area, just not too long ago, a couple of years ago, was an Iroquois village found. That's how they labeled it, an Iroquois village. Now, that's a big likelihood that 20 feet away, there could be more. And so this site that they're trying to repurpose into the new Vic project is actually something that we were told that was already given its archaeological due. They've already did an archaeological assessment there, and that there's no possibility of any remains being found there. But yet, after going through all our process and stopping, getting an injunction to stop that process from the construction from starting, and going through the process of making an archaeological plan, our first day of putting it forward, remains were found. And so that's where we stand right now. I mean, there's more intricate details in between, but that's what's fueling this, is that our responsibility as Ungwehue women, as Gaslighting, to take care of these children and make sure that they are respected, as well as how anyone there should be respected if they're buried there and we're not given a proper send off, the proper respect of their life ending there, if there are remains there.
Yeah, this discovery or this revelation comes at a time when at least 1,300 graves of children have been identified across so-called Canada at residential schools, and it reminds me of a recent report that came out through the Department of Interior in the United States that identified I think over 400 different institutions related to the federal Indian boarding school system. And one of the things that finding or that report identified was that these institutions engaged in what they called identity alteration. If not outright killing children at the site, they were indelibly or forever changed, like their identity was transformed. And I think that to me is a very frightening kind of conclusion. I mean, it's something that we all know, that this is what these schools were there for. They were not institutions of education. But then when you introduce something like the CIA-backed MKUltra project, which is essentially doing the same thing, but using more intense forms of, drug-induced torture, is to put it mildly. People kind of become obsessed with this as some kind of conspiracy, but not really looking at it in its widespread practice against Indigenous children outside of the MKUltra project. And I think this case, also just really highlights how, like you said, children were just used as guinea pigs for medical experimentation. In this case, it's mind control experimentation. And it seems conspiratorial in many ways, but it actually just aligns with what the federal government, both in Canada and the United States, were already doing to children. So I want to ask, what has the response been from the people who are planning to build this hospital, but also McGill University?
I can say something about that. They're pretty awful. We were up there for 3 days last week, following them around. We brought these people in with the GPS. Is it GPS or
GPR.
GPR? And they went over that whole area where the dogs found the human remains. So we were there monitoring it, the cultural monitors, and there were a lot of times where we weren't sure of what we're supposed to do. We know what we're supposed to do, but it wasn't agreeable to them, so they didn't give us any information, and we had to find out things for ourselves through the grapevine. So now we're going back again tomorrow because that very area that we went through, they're going to be starting to dig around where the dogs found the human remains, and they're going to remove the topsoil. And I'm not sure the tactic is or what it's supposed to do. But now we're going back, and we have cultural monitors, and we have somebody making a film of it, because we have to show people all over the world that this is what happens to you when you are going against these big institutions that want to control the world. How do we know that they're not going to have a great big control group living on the mountain there running the whole world? We don't know. We know they're up to something, but they don't tell us about it. But it is on our land, and they know it. So, we go there early, like 7 o'clock in the morning, and we do a ceremony, and then we do the words, and then everybody uh, know what we're going to be looking for. We're going to follow them. We're going to ask them questions, and the people that were doing the work, they were very happy to be asked questions, and they told us everything they could tell us. But now we're waiting for the report. But they were very helpful. They even said, we'd like to train some of your people to do this kind of work because it's going to be needed all over. They said they're so busy. They're going all over doing this, and they said there's just not enough of us that know how to do this. So we need to train your young people. So we have found some people that would like to learn it. So that's what's happening right now. And the media was coming. A lot of media came up, and they're very, very concerned and very interested. The BBC was there, and I don't even know I don't know if the ABC was there, but there was a whole lot of people that kept coming, and they stayed around for hours, just following us around and discussing everything so that they could learn as much as they can. And what's good about them is they do their homework. They read up on what we've done so far, and then when they come, they're well. They have a lot of knowledge already, so they ask some very, very good questions. So that's where I find that we're at. But then they're going ahead, and this is what you call an Indigenous-led project. We're supposed to lead it, and yet we're ignored. We're constantly ignored. So we have to nose around to find out what's going on. But we're there, and we're going to keep on. We're going to stay there. We're not leaving. I'm going up there early tomorrow morning, and we're going to go before they arrive, and we will cleanse that the grounds where they'll be working.
What is happening in all actuality right now, that's what's happening physically, to the physical effect of it. But internally, and what what I guess the public doesn't see is that they are never about our opponents who, when we call them our opponents, yes, we're against them, we're going against them, but it shouldn't be that way. What's happening is that they continue to have this denialist attitude toward what we're doing. And we've come to this agreement of the process that we're going to do, but they're finding every little gray area within the agreement to use as a loophole to not include us with information sharing, not include us in decision making. And that was one of the top things that when we received the injunction, which is now no more because we've gone to a judicial settlement, but the main focus of that was that we were to be in charge of what happens, guided by recommendations from archaeologists. And what's happening is that the responsibility fiscally or the capacity funding for different things are put to different people responsible for it or entities responsible for it. Like Canada is taking the responsibility of the archival work and providing us with the archival work. But we are still having much pushback over acquiring this, all of these archives, which is a direct need in order to do a proper archaeological assessment. And then McGill is in charge and SQI is in charge of facilitating the payments for the archaeologists. So they wrote up contracts for the panel that was decided amongst all of us. We all agreed that this would be the panel. But what is happening is that whatever little thing isn't covered within the agreement, they are utilizing that to find ways to exclude us from having the information that we need. And things are not going as expeditiously as we planned, and they can be. But right now, that denialist approach is very concerning because all that they are worried about is starting their construction, and they're utilizing all these little loopholes and tools. And for us, all we are worried about are our people and our children and other people that may be buried there or may have lost their lives there. And this is more important than any type of project, any type of expansion of a business or what have you. And what's happening is that we are going to fight against that because that's not the right thing to do. And that's our land. It's supposed to be an indigenous-led investigation. It's supposed to be an indigenous-led process that we put together. And it seems like now that something is found, it's kind of like, well, they never said what they're going to do, so we're just going to go to the next step. And that's not how it works. If we were there uncovering someone else's body that wasn't indigenous, there would be a whole plethora of press and of lawyers and such there that would be hindering that progress, that nothing would ever move. And now for us, we found something, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. That was just on a prioritized zone that wasn't even the vast area. This was just a small little postage stamp on the corner of where they wanted to start their construction. And it was actually on a particular place that they said Archaeus previously did an investigation there and made the assessment that there was no chance of having any type of remains there. And that's the first place we looked, and that's the first place we found something. So, number one, they cannot be trusted. That's number one. And we've known that from the very beginning. And all the processes that have been put in place all of these years that allowed residential schools, that allowed MKULTRA, and they're all wrong. They're all wrong. So what makes you think that that same legal system is going to make anything right? It's still continuing to be that same legal system. And they're never finding fault at the people who are controlling it. And that's the government. Okay, I'm getting a little out of my hand here. You talk.
Well,
I like out of hand.
All right.
From the start, the thing is, the Gani voiced their concerns out of court. Trying to just share those concerns that there might be unmarked burials because it was present in some testimonies that could be found online, and also the experience of some people in Ganawage, stories of people in the community who were there who were mistreated. So it was, a knowledge that was there, and then they found out that there was this construction project transforming the old hospital, which has been empty for a bit less than 10 years, to transform it into a new big campus of sustainable development for McGill University. And so they tried there was a public consultation to, ensure the social acceptability, they call it, of the project. So the Gani made submissions there and said, well, this has to be checked, and there's means now that exist, and it's not even that expensive. The search dogs, human historic human remain detection dogs. They're trained specifically on older human remains, on decaying tissues and things like that, and they're extremely efficient. And they didn't exist like 20 years ago. It's really a new way of training these dogs. And so, can we use them? And the response has just been, just total opposition to anything happening, and bringing all these lawyers, and mostly with taxpayers, public money from the part of Quebec and Canada. And we don't know how much they spent in litigation against the Mohawk Mothers to try to to avoid these archaeological means being used. But at certain points in court, Mohawk Mothers were facing 17 lawyers from the city of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and we know there are some of those lawyers are paid $500 an hour and were there for 6 hours in court. So how much did this just cost to try to block this minimal, request that the humans that are present in the ground there be respected, not be destroyed by excavation work? And as Guadillo said, the specific zone that they had started excavating with archaeological research, and the way they do it right now, is the world of archaeology. It's mostly a question of, they have to hire archaeologists when they're doing work in a sensitive area where there may be important remains, next to a river, in places where there could be important human occupation from pre-colonial times, but also more recent times. So they have to do it. So they hire a private firm. And in Quebec, there's like 3 or 4 firms that share all these contracts from the government, and they show up there and they do some test pits, some holes there. And if they find nothing there, well, it's the green light to just bring in the machinery. And most of the time, there's no one there. The archaeologists can be good-minded and they want to find things and everything, but they're also under big pressure from the developers to just, get it done. And if they do stumble on remains, well, there are stories that those will just be disposed, and let's just not talk about it. If it's little fragments and everything, let's not talk about it. We don't want the coroner to be involved and for this to be a big thing. So it's just the general process of how, well, the subsoil is being treated, and that's also in the law in its current state. In Quebec, it's the Cultural Heritage Act that was done in the 60s in a time of Quebec nationalism, where they define everything that can be found under the ground as part of the heritage of Quebec nation, and it's the Minister of Culture and Communications that makes all decisions regarding archaeological permits and where archaeological artifacts that are found will be managed by the Ministry of Culture. But this is just, when you're talking about a few feet under the ground, things that have been put there before Europeans even knew that this continent existed. How is it possible that this would belong to the colonial state and not have any involvement whatsoever from the grassroots indigenous people whose ancestors we're talking about? So the response is generally been, unfortunately, opposition and denialism to the extent that was possible for them. Even now that the dogs have
Mm-hmm.
detected the scent of human remains, well, the defendants, all they tell the media is that nothing allows us to confirm or not to confirm that there's human, remains there. So they would have to find the actual body and look at it and is this really a human body? But those dogs are not trained to detect anything else than human remains. They didn't hallucinate. There were two different dogs who spotted the exact same thing at the exact same spot, and still the response is, to the extent that it's possible for them to just deny, no, there's actually nothing there, or we don't know yet. Well, there still is something there, and it's something that's what's going to happen these next few days is um, taking off the topsoil and trying to find the burial pits and find the exact place where the burial would be. But this also has to follow,
Our
indigenous protocol for respect for human burials. You can't just go there, archaeologists just dig it in, and you're also potentially destroying forensic evidence of how that body was
Mm-hmm.
put there, because it is a crime. And there are certain institutions that would be responsible for a clandestine burial like that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what happened, but this body is just in front of a nurse's residence. It's just next to the wall, so it might also come from the inside. Could come from ventilation. Could be in pipes that are underground, and with water flowing. Could come from somewhere else. So it's really complicated to identify that. And there's a concern that if nothing is found immediately, well, they might proceed with construction. And there's no, just the laws that are put in place are completely inadequate for this. And that's the bottom line of this whole process, where the Mohawk Mothers are putting in place the protocols for respecting human burials, because those protocols do not exist at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And since Canada admitted genocide, was forced to admit genocide, whereas after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, it had concluded to cultural genocide, just because it wasn't part of its mandate to examine the burials themselves. But no, this is children, dying, being killed often, and being buried without any markers. So this is genocide, and just the whole legal framework has to change to take this into account.
And once again, it's being led in the manner where they're asking for a permit to go to the next stage. Now, you haven't been given it the humanity, because once again, it's all institutions that are running these grounds. There's no personal attachment to it. It's all about money. So now we have this indigenous led investigation, and when it comes to the next level, we're not even being notified of results of whatever they're doing. And then they go and they apply for a permit, and then they get the permit from an entity that is actually one of the beneficiaries of this project. And then the laws that they follow were made way back when even back then they were racist, discriminatory laws that were put in place. And like he said, it's all about Quebec, all this heritage belonging to Quebec and not the people. It's like it's belonging to a state and not people. And then you go furthermore, and then they ask for a permit. And in this day and age, the way people work is, well, I have a permit for it, so I can do it. Whether the permit is the right thing or the wrong thing, they're following that type of mentality. When these are people, indigenous people. But if they weren't indigenous people and somebody found some type of evidence of remains, we would have the coroner's office there, the police would be there. It's so discriminatory, and that is so evident. And this is where we have to fix this now. We have to put this process in there, and we have to let make a change to whatever is in place right now, because it doesn't work. It never has worked. It was always there to protect the person who's just benefiting from whatever they're getting from it. So this is what we have to change, and we have to bring that to light, because straight across the board, we're going into a court that is actually something that doesn't work. So we're bringing our own ways into that court and saying, listen, we're going to follow ourselves, but we're holding you to follow your own laws. And at that, we are going to bring up that, hello, that hasn't worked. There isn't only 8,000 children that are to be found tomorrow. There's way more than that. 20,000, 50,000 is a small number of what we know they've done. That's just statistics that they have on. In our investigation, we're seeing how many children have lost their mother in these processes. We're seeing how many children they change their name or they transfer them to another state, provincial, federal institution, and they just become a number. And sometimes they become a non-number. Sometimes they're transferred and then all of a sudden they don't exist. And that was the state of mind of the government that produces all these laws. That was the state of mind. It was to get rid of the Indian problem. And by the way, we're not Indians. So this is something that we need to change, and we need to help keep bringing up, and we need to even have a great understanding between all the people that we live amongst. It's not just for us. It's, do you want your child to live in a society that anything is possible? That one day we might not like your people, and we're going to take all your children and put them in a school, and then they're going to lose their identity and never know what a real mother and father is. And then it screws up the rest of their life. So this is something that we have to take care of. This is something that has to get put out there. So whatever you need to question us on, question us now, because we need to get that out there.
Okay. Well, she's talking about the law, and they keep on saying, well, this is about the law, but it's all white man's law. And it completely is contrary to the Guyana Goa, which is our way. And we put nature first, we put children first, and especially the unborn children that are coming. And to me, they want rules, and if the rules don't suit them, then they just go into their legislature and they just make up some kind of a new rule that gives them the power to go ahead and do what they want. And now they want, and then they keep telling us, well, the priests and all these people, they're just advising everybody to pray. And so it's they're in trouble. Obviously, they know they're in trouble, and it's all to me. Everything they're doing is make believe, because they want to do everything they can to stop us from finding this evidence and to investigate what they have put in there. They planned this whole thing from start to finish, and they know where everything is, and they know how to find them, and we're asking them to tell us and to cooperate with us. And then the other part of it is that when you get right down to it, they're the ones benefiting from the murders of our people, and especially our little children. Now they cut down our population so much that we had hardly anybody left. So now a few of us are making a comeback, and we're starting to dig this up and finding out more and more and more. And the more we open, and the more things we find, the worse this whole situation gets. And they're trying to cover that up. But I think it's too late, because I think everybody now sees that, they'll say, well, we're going to pass a law and we'll be saved, and we'll shut those women up. Well, they can't do that, because a lot of people are looking into it themselves, and we're asking for people to stand with us, beside us, so we can do this work, because it's really important. It's important for them, important for us. We have to do it because our children ask us to do it, because they are there, and that's why we go and we acknowledge them. We burn tobacco, we talk, we go around and we put the tobacco on the site, and then they go ahead and they're doing all this work, which is, by the way, as far as I know, they're not supposed to, but they're doing it. So now, we're trying to find out how they validated that, which we will probably find out. And but then it'll be too late because they've already started work on it. So this is how they plan all these things. They completely defy anything, any of our rights, anything.
But if we defy anything, the police show up.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If I go and protect that land, the police will show up. That's evident. You've seen that everywhere. Every time when a person goes and does the right thing, there's a police that shows up and puts might over right, and then ends up, we're the criminal.
Yeah, that's also the thing where, the Mohawk Mothers obtained an injunction to halt the excavation project, but it's been so hard to get that enforced in a way or another, because there's been many breaches to the agreement that's been made, but on small points of detail, little loopholes and gray zones where it depends on interpretation. But how could you actually get this enforced? Whereas usually injunctions are the main tool that is used by the colonial state. And right now, as we speak, there's a group of indigenous land defenders who are blocking the access to the landfill close to Winnipeg and Manitoba, where the bodies of murdered indigenous women were put there, and the state is refusing to fund the investigation to find those bodies there, despite the family's request. And people have been blocking the access road, and now they just got an injunction. So we're going to see how it happens. But usually those injunctions, that's what justifies police intervention immediately.
And
That
guns and the whole works.
Yeah.
Force and
Use
force.
of force.
Yes.
Right now, as of this weekend, they had on the news, they said that we can't block roads anymore, traffic.
They're gonna stop moose from crossing the road too. What's next?
Everything.
But nature always has a reason. And they're fighting nature.
You can't fight
We're
nature.
part of nature, so they're fighting nature and us. And that is our reason for doing what we're doing. And the earth is never wrong, The earth is always right. And that's going to be coming forward more and more. You'll see it. You'll watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it reminds me too of, in 1990, they tried to build a golf course in a burial or near a burial ground, and that resulted in the so-called Oka crisis. In 2016, they tried to build a pipeline through our territories and actually cross some of the most significant. This was the archaeologists. They said this, cross some of the most significant archaeological sites on the Great Plains in North America that archaeologists have ever witnessed. And literally, like several days after this report came out, and it was by an indigenous archaeologist named Tim Mentz from Hunkpapa, or the Standing Rock Sioux Nation, the Dakota Access Pipeline builders literally just came in several days later, knowing exactly where these burial sites were, and these very old, much older than the country of Canada or the United States. These very old archaeological sites were just bulldozed through, and they actually used dogs, attack dogs, on people, on land defenders who were attempting to stop the desecration of these lands and these sites. And I was thinking about it, and Philippe brought this up about the Winnipeg landfill, and I was just thinking about how Canada and the United States deployed, pulled out all stops in their coast guards and their navies and whatnot to find the wreckage of 5 billionaires who got into a sub and decided to go see the Titanic and then died. But yet when it comes to Indigenous women whose bodies were buried in landfills, they think of them as garbage. And I mean, they literally, that is the action that they have taken to say they're equivalent to garbage because it's not worth recovering them, because it seems archaic and it seems old school to say, but in reality and in practice, they simply don't view us as human beings. They don't, because if they did, they would respect, the requests such as yourselves to recover and to repatriate your own children back to, this isn't something that happened 100 years ago. This is something that happened, about half a century ago, 6 decades ago. It's recent. It's not long in the past, right? And so I think it's really indicative of the attitude of both Canada and the United States when it comes to Indigenous people. Simply, we're not human. We don't have the same rights as, as a white person, as a billionaire who's getting in a sub, So I think it's this particular case just really hits home the attitude, the very, I guess, genocidal attitude that Canada has towards Indigenous people. And we're expected to follow the rules. We're expected to follow the laws. And we go through these processes, and I've been a part of some of these processes, and they take years to unfold. They take years of court cases back and forth. And even after they're decided, there's still things that go undecided. But yet, when it comes to their building a pipeline, or they're building a campus or whatever it is, and it conflicts with our rights, it takes a day to decide whether or not we have rights. And so I always like to bring that up. These systems were not meant, they're premised on our elimination. They're premised on our destruction. So how do we rely on them? And now we're criminalized for even just trying to protect our own humanity and our own ancestors. Sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox, but
Well, do you find that they're getting crueler and crueler to us? They were hiding it for a long time, and now that this is being found, I sense that there's a more cruelty towards us, especially those of us that are not part of their system, like the tribal councils and the band councils. We are doing this on behalf of nature, and now they're treating us more and more cruel all the time. So something's messing their heads, I think, because that's all they know. They know that they can get the gun, they can take this away from us, that away from us, and then they can make us, people that don't even exist because we're never in the newspaper. Nobody hears about us. I'm glad that you're doing this because at least that's one way of getting out our story. And our story really applies to just about all of our people all over Turtle Island. So I just wonder if you think that that it is getting worse and worse, and because the more we bring out into the open, for example, anybody going anywhere in Canada, I'm sure that the Prime Minister Trudeau is going to be asked that question. So, what did you do to the Indigenous people? Why did you do that? And who's at fault? Who did it? I'm sure they ask him everywhere. It's a total embarrassment, and they want the land because Canada is not a country. It has no land. It has no culture. It has no language. It's not they speak a foreign language, English, another foreign language, French. So now to have the land, they have to remove us. And they've got plans next year to do that. That is the 100-year plan. And next year is where they're going to carry it out. We're not exactly sure how they're going to do it, but that's what we understand they're going to do.
I hope by that time, by next year, they have had their head examined before this happens.
Well,
Yeah.
one process that they're trying to use to do that is they want all the communities to sign on to UNDRIP and say that yes, that's there, and with that, it's relinquishing your inherent right and saying that the control of any of your rights is determined by who you signed on with, and for us, we already have our own way of life. We already have our own way that we govern ourselves. We all already have the natural law that we follow, and that the laws that are presiding over what we are doing right now and what are protecting people that are trying to go against us is a system that is not made for people. It is made for institution. And it is made for those institutions to have the power of everything. And that's the big conflict in this case, is that an institution is fighting for money and power, and on this side of the fence, we're fighting for people and nature. And you can't use your money and your power without people and nature. So the other thing is that how much money are they going to throw at this? We can keep going all day. We do this out of what our duty is to do. So we're prepared to continue to do what we have to do. And I think that Canadians and Americans should open their eyes and make a stance on what the government is using against people who are doing the right thing. I don't know how many days we've been in court, but each lawyer say they're at $500. That's just the lawyer for that day. And we have 17 lawyers sitting across from us. And for one night,
And they've lost every time. They lost every single time.
Yeah, we were in our.
Actually, it costs as much as running those sonars for searching for the submersible. When they put those lawyers.
And that's just the day that they are. One day we were in a judicial settlement till 11 o'clock at night, still sitting in the courtroom trying to decide this. That's one of our days. Now, how much did that cost? And that's not including all of the work and all of the resources they put into finding their archives and finding whatever they need to fight against little old us, So, I mean, if citizens would reach out and say, no, I oppose you fighting against this, that would be one little way of helping. But I mean, getting this out there and having people understand who we are, and just, I never have to be acknowledged. Just leave us to do the way we conduct ourselves and the way we live our lives, and we would be happy, But don't try to tell us how to live our lives. And that's what that government and that court system, that royal proclamation and all of the legal standings that come underneath that, that's what's happening. But I mean, they're in for it because I can go all day. And then when I can't, I have my daughters watching me. And she's going to be twice as tough as I am.
Yeah, I think the worst in all of this is the gaslighting, I think is the term, that when you come forward with these concerns and your own duties and the way your framework of mind, you say, it comes from a law of nature and everything, but it's grounded in your language. It's grounded in a whole way of living. The way that colonial society reacts to that is that, well, yeah, you're crazy until you're considered crazy before proof of the contrary.
Yeah.
And you'll have to format it this way in this crazy legal language that you're supposed to study 7 years to get a bar to just speak this secret formulas of language. And until then, you'll just be considered crazy, and the burden is on you to prove that you even exist. And everything's premised on the fact that you would be extinguished. And actually the interlocutors for the so-called First Nations would be the band councils and, the creations of the colonial society and the Indian Act. And that's the way they're doing right now. Like the latest version of termination policies is implementing that United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. And it's just people, the UNDRIP, because they're negotiating that with the Assembly of First Nations, the AFN, which is the regroupment of all the band council chiefs throughout so-called Canada. And they're negotiating it in a way where to acknowledge like indigenous sovereignty, well, indigenous people have to acknowledge that they're part of Canada and they are Canadians, and they're just one interest group within this society, this multicultural society. Oh yeah, we also have these indigenous Canadians, sort of thing. Whereas the inherent right, that is possessed right now, even despite the Indian Act and everything, which is just a clear aggression, is entire. The inherent right is this is unceded territory. just not the imposition of this
Yes.
Canadian Admiralty law is illegal. It is encroachment. It is oppression. It's a military operation, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're looking at the scope of things, you're looking at the ability for these entities, Canada, the provinces, and all of these corporations who are scratching each other's back. They are the perpetrators. They are the perpetrators of creating this system that is meant for every person to fail. They say, "Oh, you got to do this like that. You got to prove yourself, and you got to get a legal. You got to be a lawyer, and you got to do this, and you got to do that." And then you get to it, and that system is made for the entities to stay on top and the people to fail. And when people come to terms with that individuals are not looked at as people, especially us, but even on any Joe on the road, they're not meant to win. They're meant to follow and be subservient and to follow and they're only given a privilege.
Whereas corporations are considered as individuals.
Yes.
They have
Yeah.
inherent rights to make their profits out of destroying nature and things like that.
But you can't put them in jail. And you can't kill them.
Right. Because who are you going to put in jail? It's just like when I look at Justin Trudeau and him saying, "Oh, residential schools was a very dark time in Canada's history." Yeah, buddy, well, when you signed on and you signed your name on that dotted line to be the prime minister, you were taking on the burden of that. And you should have thought twice. And you should sit at the table with your children and explain that to them. Try to explain that to your child.
Well, we also explain often about what we go through, and we ask these young people. We say, "What do you think? Did you get any benefit out of what was done to us of the genocide?" And they don't even realize it. And then we explain it to them. And I said, "And you know why it's still on the books? It's because a person like you." I said, "How many of you go and vote?" And most of them will raise their hand. And I say, "Okay, you are the ones that have gone to vote in favor of continuing this genocide. You're putting your X there, and that's what you want. Because, why do you think? Because you're benefiting from it. What are you going to do about it? What if you were in our place? What would you do?" They don't know what to say. That's the question.
And that system was made to make a person feel so far detached from actually making a decision that they feel like, well, there's nothing that I could do. I'm just a person. They make it so difficult to come, and all of the jargon and all of the hoops you got to jump through in order to be heard, or in order to be validated, or in order to be acknowledged, that everybody says, well, I can't do anything. I'm just a person. Well, that's the way the system was made, to make people just say, I can't do it. It's too much work.
Well, that's why
to them.
Also this fight, to recover, and respect those burials that were produced by those medical experiments. They're linked to, the opposition that Mohawk mothers are facing is the same that were put on these children. It's the same psychiatric tricks of making you feel bad, for even thinking about it, making you doubt that you're even sane, and imposing norms on you, because the first things that Ganawagi people remembered about this Allen Memorial Institute, where the MKULTRA experiments were being done, is that children from Ganawagi and also from Ganasatake were sent there at the Allen Memorial for intelligence tests. They did IQ tests, and that was actually a national program that started, I think, in Oneida, which was called Caradoc back then. We found that in the archives. It was the Defense Research Board from the Canadian Army that had a panel on Indian research, and they started doing these intelligence tests, IQ tests, to evaluate the assimilability of Indigenous children. So it was like putting on them criterias, of sanity that were for Canadian people, really, completely. And, Canadians from the 1950s, really, very patriarchal and, all those norms. And so they would say those children are all retarded, they would call them, because they just had a different frame of mind, which would be a lot closer actually than the frame of mind of the general population right now. That would seem a lot more reasonable than, how people were thinking back then, all Catholics and everything, and really rigid, type of society. But they were just deeming them crazy retarded, and they would incarcerate them, psychiatrize them on that basis. But especially what we found out is that those intelligence tests, they would take the highest ranking kids and incarcerate them. And that's where they
And do away with them.
would do away with them.
Send them to that horrible place in Six Nations. And one of the things that people don't seem to realize and forget is that the Department of Indian Affairs is a department of the military. And they even have a war room there that I have personally seen. And they've got these great big map of Canada, and they've got colored flags on them, and they put red around the Great Lakes and around the St. Lawrence, and that's all the Iroquois communities. So I guess we're the ones that they're most worried about. But the thing is that they have set a time limit of any more kowtowing or even doing anything for Indigenous people. It's going to suddenly all stop. And they've taken money. For example, McGill University took money from the Iroquois Trust Fund to build that huge university and they never paid it back. And now we are eventually going to be dealing with that in the court in our case. But what we're concerned about is that we're having to face surveillance of all kinds from the military, from all the different agents throughout Canada and even probably the United States, because we have constantly been watched. I saw that from looking at the war room. They had a whole wall of computers. I said, "What's in there?" They said, "Everything is in there. Every single community. We know everything." And this is a soldier who took me in there and showed it to me. I'm not going to name him, but he took me, and I think I'm probably the only one that ever saw it. And during the Oka crisis, these generals and everybody, they were coming back and forth into that war room and conducting this war against us in Gunnasadagi. So I'm sure that I imagine that's what they're doing. That this is the headquarters, Indian Affairs in Hull, Canada. So we are very much aware, and we always look over our shoulders as to what's happening and what's going on, because we know how big and how it's complete that they have these eyes on us. We know that. We know everything. We know that they know everything about us. So what do you do? What do you do in those cases?
Yeah, it's this is quite a amazing interview. I think you've all opened up some very broad questions for our listeners, especially going forward. It's like, it seems, I don't. It seems like I use this metaphor a lot, and some people have probably already heard this, but it's like Groundhog's Day. It's like Native people are like Bill Murray. We wake up every single day and we know, we know that things like that. This is a repeat over and over and over again, but we have to try to convince everybody else that the same day is happening over, because that's like settler colonialism. It's just like on repeat over and over and over again, and we seem to have this knowledge that things are changing, but nothing. It's like what you all said. It's like as if we are the children who enter the residential school on the very first day and then told that we are not only insane, but we're criminally insane for what we believe.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what it's like entering into a court system. That's what it's like talking to a judge. That's what it's like talking to an RCMP officer. That's what it's like talking to people who want to say that we have reconciled. And there's nothing.
Precisely.
We have got the truth and we have reconciled. So let's move on.
Yes. And what makes it even worse is that sometimes we have that genocidal system right in our own community.
Yes.
here to divide us and to make us complacent, make us make some people way comfortable that they don't want to do the right thing. They think the right thing is driving a nice car and having a beautiful house, and instead of thinking about what's in store for the children when that car gets old and runs out of gas and that house gets old. What's left for their children and their grandchildren? And that's going to be a different story because next year, there's a lot of changes that are going to happen, and we cannot how do you say that? We cannot see the future too concretely to know what is going to happen, because we have entities within our community that are gung-ho on following the government and for money and for security, instead of knowing that that's a false pretense right off the jump, and that we have much more power in our future of having harmony by using our own ways.
Yeah, what I believe.
Well,
Right now on the whole reserve, there's, I think, every different kind of religion to separate us. Everybody is. We can't even help each other. You talk to your neighbor, no, because they believe in this. Another one believes in this. We're all being separated. But our ways,
we have understanding.
We have love. That's what you call love, because our ways are continuous, whether you liked it or not. Was only one thing.
Taking care. Yeah, taking care. Yeah, taking care of yourself.
But these new governments they have, it's totally the opposite. And that's why they're doing that, so we all go
if you just
kaput like them.
If you just take, for instance, how my mother just expressed herself, she has an old mannerism in her, but those beliefs of the different religions, that was another way of turning us against each other within our community, is that she used the word on the reservation. And in my eyes and my understandings, older people told me, don't use the word reservation. Reservations are for animals. It's a plot reserved for animals. And then us being Indians. But she was brought up in a time that was the only word in English that was used. She only spoke Ngwe. And so when she speaks in English, all these little nuances, all these little words mean something. And that's another thing that we have to rectify along the way, is teaching our children about saying the word prayer, and, that we don't pray. We have, creation gave us everything we need to do it ourselves, and that was the gift that was given to us. And we don't need to ask something that you have to believe in. We use what's concrete, what's here in front of us, what we can touch, feel, see, hear, use our senses. That's how we help ourselves, and that's what we're doing right now as We're not using something that we have to believe in or have faith in, something that was a man-made idea. It's actually something that we know is here. It's creation. Part of creation, it's part of nature, and that's what we're going to use.
Well, we're using what we know based on creation, and when they run into some problems, they use what they know, and that's the gun. And that's what we're wondering about, whether they're going to bring the guns out and start using it on us again. They are already in smaller ways. The women are still going missing, and the children are still being taken, and the press is still not really printing what's going on. And so they have so much power to control the mentality of the Canadian public and the world public. And so now I'm just thinking that they're pushing it and pushing it because I think maybe the Judgment Day is coming. You know, they have this Judgment Day thing, and I think that it is coming up.
I love that. I think they have that Judgment Day thing going on, you know. Well, it's coming.
Well, I mean, right now they're trying to distract everybody. You know, they're pushing and pushing this story and that story, and they're giving money to our people here and there. But it's basically to really take our minds off it and distract us. So I think they think that when things the worst happens to them, that they have the police to help them. The police will come to their rescue. Whereas when something happens to us, the police don't come to our rescue. We have to do it ourselves, like we did in 1990. So they want to settle these arguments with guns, I think. That's what I think, because they tried to do it in 1990. We had the actual experience of it, and we have never forgotten that because it wasn't that long ago. And so now nature is doing what it's doing. We're having problems with nature right now. Nature's coming out in the open, like you know, with the tornadoes all over the place, and then we've got fires everywhere and everywhere. I mean, right from one end of Canada to the other, fires.
The guns will be no good.
Yeah, that's right. So how are they going to do that? Who's going to come and save them and help them? Maybe they have to go back to their mother where they came from and start, you know, they destroyed her or wherever they came from. So maybe they have to go back there and fix it because they didn't do it. They destroyed our land here. Now we've got to go back fixing our mother. And that is our job. And we will do it. So, but we got to do something with these people who continue to want to destroy everything. It's not just here and us, the Mohawks, it's other people as well.
So I'm going to have to ask a question. What would it, how about educating them?
Well, this is going to educate them.
Do you think they have it up there to learn?
I don't think, I mean, this is just my opinion, but I don't think it's really worth the time to try to convince people who should know better, who are very educated, that we're human beings. But I think everyday people, like who are getting, like, I don't think white people or settlers benefit as much as they think they do. And there are other groups, especially in the United States, you know, like African Americans and people who also who are also getting squeezed. And I think that's what you know, that they deserve the education. They deserve to know the things that we're talking about. And that's, you know, who we try to reach is people who are already cast outside of the system. And Du Bois, he's a thinker. He called it the wages of whiteness, that white people earn a psychological wage, thinking that, you know, the checker at Walmart is somehow equivalent to Donald Trump, right? but really they're not the same kinds of people. And so I think recognizing that and really speaking, I think the stories that are, you know, that we're telling, especially around children, resonate with everyone, you know, because it's a universal human value, is to value the future, which is invested in children and young people. And if you don't get that, I don't know, you know, if you're going to put up opposition to that, then there's no help for you. You know, I don't know what to say to you.
Yeah.
Well, they have the system that they have is not meant to save us. It's meant to eliminate us. So if that's the whole system and that's what they're doing by, you know, we're going into the court. We're learning a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
And we're learning how strong the Guyana Goa is. It's so strong.
Yeah.
And we know how to use it now. And I think that they're in a stupor right now as to what to do with us. And every time we've been to court 10 times now, we've won each one of those times. Now, how is that possible? And they're, you know, they've got some of these sellout Obahumwe natives, and they're helping them, but they're sellouts, so they're giving them the wrong information. So that makes it easier for us to deal with these people. And it's so amazing that we did this. We're shocked, actually, but we did it because we just said, all we're going to do is tell the truth. That is the biggest weapon we have. They've got guns, they've got words, they got everything. But us, we've got the truth. And as long as we stick to that, we are going to win. There's no doubt in my mind.
I actually wasn't amazed when that happened. I wasn't shocked. I knew that we could do it. And I know that what's in front of us and what we have to utilize is the right thing. It's the true thing. It's the true way to be human. And that perhaps I don't know how to utilize it to its fullest capacity yet. But I knew that we would find a way because we're going down the right path and that we have all the tools within it to keep building that strength as we go. That's what it is. It's a path you're going, and it only gets better and better with your experience of what happens along the way. So I didn't have that doubt, and I know that it is time for our people to come back to the fullest and to do this. And I hope it's done in my generation. I hope it's done
when we're still
when
around.
they're still around to
Mhm.
see that, to have some kind of peace. And because that's what we're striving for, to have that harmony happen within our people, so we could live with with our dignity and with our self-respect. And that's what this is all about. And we are going to, I don't need other people to give me acknowledgement or say it's okay or say they're sorry. I just know for me and my daughter and my son and my grandson that that's the path that I'm going to follow, and I'm not going to stop, and I'm going to hand them the reins, and I'm not going to make them worse off than when they got here. They're going to have more and more tools, and they're going to know I'm going to have done their homework for them, and then they have even better chance of advancement in knowing who we are and using that same system. So that's what's important to me, because I know that there are some people that don't have all of, or are not even close to understanding it, but I know they have their hearts in it. And I know our people are building the nation faster and faster. I mean, all my friends have like tons of kids, and we're just getting stronger and stronger. So I think that we're going to be successful in this, because I will not let it fail. I will not let it fail. I'll do whatever I have to do to make this work.
Well, this is all about creation, the law of creation. That is what we're living by, and that's what we need, and that's what's helping us. There is no other law that is going to help us. We know that. We have totally withdrawn from that. So we think that it's going to work. We know it's going to work.
Well, I really appreciate you all for taking the time to speak on these issues today. And I know it's probably really hard, and you've undergone so much reliving a lot of this. But for listeners and viewers of the podcast, what's the best way that they can follow your work and continue to stay updated?
Well, there's a website that was just launched, mohawkmothers.ca. And so mohawkmothers.ca, there's regular updates that are put there. Also, more generally in the media, APTN is following, the case very well. And Mohawk Nation News, that's the central hub for information. And it's a website that Gantinetta is one of the editors of that website.
And it doesn't just cover this scenario, but all of the events and nuances and everything that attacks us, follows us, also all of the ways that we conduct ourselves. It's given in that viewpoint of setting things straight, and she does a good job at putting in like satire and comedy in there, and she has music, and like it's not just dry what do you call it? Dry
News.
information and news. It's actually like a joy to read it because it gives a viewpoint. And wait a minute, is she joking about that? Or, and there also is Garangyak Daje and a lot of commentary and a lot of correspondence there. So it's a good place to go for information
book.
about our people.
Yeah, and last
And
Book.
yes, and
the book, the Mohawk Warrior Society, a handbook on sovereignty and survival, published by PM Press last year. It's in all good bookstores, meaning if a bookstore doesn't have it, it's not a
it's
good
not a good
bookstore.
bookstore.
We did a really amazing podcast interview with you all.
Yes,
So
yes,
that was
yes.
really cool.
That was a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
So
Thank
we
you
just
so much.
we just did a little tour this weekend, and geez, such good response.
Mhm.
You'd be surprised how many people are understanding what we're doing, and that they want to hear more, and they want to be included, they want to be involved, and it's like people that I've never areas of people that I never met, never would have known if we didn't do this. And it's very nice to meet people from all over and see that it's inspiring to know, or it's a boost in what we're doing, because it keeps us moving forward. It keeps us. It's inspiring. It keeps me motivated. That's right. That's to see that all these people are sitting there and they're hanging on your words, and they're asking such intelligent questions that we're happy to say we know, or I don't know, but I can find out. And just keeping people's minds open, and their minds are open out there. There are a lot of people that have an open mind.
We have to meet them personally, though.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
we'll put all these links in the show notes, and I really appreciate you all taking the time today for this really important issue, but also just solidarity and love from all of us here at Red Nation and across Turtle Island. So.
Nyauko,
Nyauko.
Go, Alec.
Ona.
Ana.
No.